Did Gege mess up here? In chapter 262, the most recent chapter as I write in this video, there are a lot of things to question. Question number 1, why is it only 7 pages long? Answer, Gege's sick. Question 2, why do we immediately get a 2-week break after this? Answer, Gege is very sick. Question number 3, and the main focus of this video, is Yuta's lack of Gojo's memories here a plot hole? In this video, I'll give you the major reasons for and against this possible plot hole. Now, let's just quickly get into why this is such a big deal in the first place and how this is even a possible plot hole to begin with. During the Shibuya incident and Gojo's imprisonment inside the prison realm, Kenjaku not only reveals the fact that he is, someone who jumps around from corpse to corpse and not, in fact, actually Suguru Geto. He is actually a sorcerer that's lived for hundreds of years and merely coveted Geto's cursed spirit manipulation. Now, after Gojo is sealed, Kenjaku reveals little bits and pieces more about his cursed technique. He also states this, which is very, very important. The body is the soul and the soul is the body. Otherwise, this phenomenon of the body's memories entering my mind after changing hosts can't be explained. There are mild differentiations in the translations, but all of which refer to Kenjaku retaining or gaining the memories as well as the curse technique of the host body. This basically boils down to Kenjaku having access to all the memories inside of Geto's head, as well as Kaori Tadori's, this random dude from the Heian era, etc. He has access to all of their memories. I mean, this is somewhat proven by Kenjaku's knowledge of Gojo, despite not knowing him personally, as well as calling him Satoru in a similar way to Geto to freak Gojo's ass out and get him trapped inside the prison realm. So that means that anyone else who may possibly gain access to this curse technique through whatever means necessary, maybe consumption, would also have access to any memories of any host body that they choose to move their consciousness to. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now, this is where the possible plot hole comes in. During the most recent chapter, we see some more of the domain clash between Guta, Yojo, Satoruta, Gokotsu, whatever you want to call him. We see the domain clash between Yuta and Sukuna. The chapter starts off, we see Yuji and Todo are pretty far off, which makes sense. I mean, Yuji barely survived Malevolent Shrine earlier on his own with a simple domain he learned from being inside of Kusakabe. Pause. And he was still struggling in MS, so Yuji and Todo have no business being around this clash, so it makes sense. We then get the info that Gojo trained with Yuta to increase his abilities with barrier techniques, meaning the domain expansion we see here and the domain expansion we see during the three-way deadlock are significantly different. The three-way deadlock version being more than likely significantly weaker than the one we see against Sukuna, without even mentioning or counting the amount of cursed techniques Yuta copies and attains in between these two fights. The chapter overall is mainly just domain jargon, Yuta having the memories of Gojo's shrunken barrier that he created with his experience from the prison realm. Granted, this could be argued that somehow by some goofy inexplicable means that Yuta simply figured this out by seeing Gojo do it and not necessarily Yuta having the memories of Gojo creating the shrunken barrier, even though it's commented that Gojo is capable of making this barrier due to his time in the prison realm. So, in my opinion, I feel like this is more than enough evidence to suggest that Yuta has at least some of Gojo's memories. I mean, later on he literally uses blue, so he kind of has to, but obviously he doesn't have all the memories, as I'll explain later. The clash continues and Sukuna increases the 99-second time limit of his new Malevolent Shrine by decreasing its range to just fit around the outside of Infinite Void. Basically, this fight will be decided by who can damage more within a 3-minute time span, because after those 3 minutes are up, Malevolent Shrine will destroy Infinite Void. So Yuta needs to damage Sukuna to the point where he cannot maintain Malevolent Shrine, similarly to when Gojo blasted Sukuna into the Malevolent Shrine with red before, or Sukuna needs to either beat Yuta to disable Infinite Void or just survive the 3 minutes. Now that's all good and dandy. However, shortly after this, Yuta tries to use blue, as I just mentioned, to attack Sukuna and pulls him in. Sukuna then rushes Yuta and uses his stumps to parry him. Jesus, Yuta fans looking kind of dumb right now. And as Sukuna strikes Yuta, he says the phrase that caused this video's entire creation. Yuta is surprised by the fact that during this current domain clash inside the shrunken barrier, and whilst Malevolent Shrine is active, Sukuna is able to use Domain Amplification to nullify the Limitless and make contact with Gojo/Yuta. This in of itself is pretty innocuous and unassuming. Sukuna states that Mei's crows couldn't see the inside of the domain barrier, so Yuta would have no way of knowing what happened inside the domain expansion, whilst we the audience do. However, time for a little flashback, around 35 chapters in the past. Chapter 227 to be more specific. This chapter shows us one of the many domain clashes between Gojo and Sukuna. And what's that? What is that? Oh. So Gojo knew this. He found out during one of the domain clashes that Sukuna could use domain amplification whilst his domain expansion is active. Now, this has a few possible explanations. I know that felt like a bit of a long-winded way to explain the topic of this video, but I'm going to be honest, I need to hit the minimum for ad revenue, baby. Possibility number 1. it is an error, straight up. I'll say right off the bat, I don't believe this. However, after I made this poll, it seems that a relatively decent sized portion of the fandom, or just the people who voted, think that it's possible that Gege forgot that Gojo knew this before his death, and that this may somehow be a plot hole. Hence why this video's thumbnail and title look the way they do. A little bit clickbaity, a little bit not. Possibility number 2. As Kenjaku's curse technique still has a cavalcade of questions surrounding it despite being used by an entirely new person at this point, the technique remains enigmatic. We don't even have an official name as far as I'm aware. It's just known as Kenjaku's curse technique, I think. We know, as I stated earlier, that when the CT is used, the user gains access to the memories of the host body. However, we don't know the specifics of the memory gaining process. I initially thought that what would happen would be something similar to Hikari's domain. Your brain just fills with the information and memories all at once. But there are a few problems with that, mainly being that if that were the case, Yuta would be fucked, because in Shibuya, during Gojo's 0.2 domain, around half a year's of info flooded into everyone's brain in the vicinity from the Infinite Void, and everyone, including special grade cursors, were in a complete coma. Now times that amount of information by 56 to 58 times to match how old Gojo was, as well as maybe possible extra information he may gain from the 6 eyes, and yeah, if that happened, Yuta would be screwed and that 5-minute timer would run out before he would even have the ability to move. As a result of this, chances are that with Kenjaku's curse technique, the user will slowly accrue the memories of the host body over time, or they can selectively access specific memories at will, just not at once. I mean, as I said earlier, Yuta can use the shrinking barrier created using Gojo's experience in the prison realm. However, he lacks the experience of Gojo's memories during the domain clash, so it's kind of up in the air for the next few weeks how Yuta accesses these memories. I'm personally more privy to the second possibility, as I believe it may be foreshadowing. Yuta searching through Gojo's memories as he's fighting and will probably figure out a way to deal more major damage to Sukuna. I mean, at this point, how much more major damage can you deal to him? I mean, he is fighting with literal stumps, he's 8 more black flashes than Hanami, and he's been stabbed straight through the heart. So God knows what Yuta will do to him. Maybe he'll land a black flash like he did in the JJK0 movie, but who knows? But if we go with this line of thinking and try to think of possible things Yuta can whip out against Sukuna, pause, he's shown a capability to use blue in this chapter, and during Jujutsu Kaisen 0 and the majority of the series, we see how much of a reversed curse technique genius this kid is. So to be honest, after this domain clash, it's not exactly out of the realm of possibility for him to launch a red or a hollow purple even. Maybe he'll start chanting as well, who knows. I mean, the only thing that initially stopped Gojo from performing red and in turn purple was his lack of proficiency in reverse curse technique, which, as I just stated, Yuta is kind of the goat of. I mean, also during the Sukuna and Gojo fight, Gojo showed off multiple anti-domain techniques, so it could be possible for Yuta to access simple domain and falling blossom emotion, which is pretty neat. I just pray for both Yuta stans and Gojo stans that this fight doesn't end with another world cutting slash. I mean, that would mean that they've both died twice to a world cutting slash if that happens, which would just be unfortunate. I feel like a lot of people will agree with me, however, that this fight is more than likely not just going to end with the domain clash itself. Throughout the entire series, it seems like domain expansions, the mass majority of the time, are not things that actually end battles. Hanami, Dagon, Mahito, Toji, Ryu, Yuro, Kashimo, Yorozu, Gojo, despite most of them using their domains or attempting to, or being inside someone else's domain, the domains themselves did not end the battle or result in the battle's end. I mean, look at Gojo vs Sukuna. They clashed 5 times and neither domain got the kill. It's exceedingly rare for a kill to occur inside a user's domain or during a domain clash, despite how heavily they are used and how powerful they are, and that they are claimed to be the peak of Jujutsu by Kenjaku, it doesn't matter. For the time being, however, with this large break for Gege's health, we're just going to be left in the dark for a little while. Also, a neat little thing before the end, in this new coloured page, the 6 eyes are coloured to be green instead of blue, which is pretty cool to look at, to be honest, which is why I reused this animation from my last video but changed the colours to green. That's the video. Watch this JJK game show I made, or watch this video about the new Boogie Woogie. Doodles, my doodles. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.